The flyer read, "Pure joy, bottled and ready for you. Call now." Below the text was a phone number. I was trudging home after another grueling shift when I spotted the paper taped to a lamppost. Something about it struck me as funny, so I snapped a picture to show my wife when I got home. But by the time I stepped through the door of our house, the thought was gone. My evening was a blur of routine. Helping with dinner, scrubbing dishes, packing my son's lunch, making sure his backpack was ready for school, reading him a bedtime story, and then tidying up his scattered toys in the living room. Every night was the same sequence, played on repeat. The next morning, I woke up with my back pressed lightly against my wife's. I always had to be up first, slipping out of bed in the dark to get ready for work. Hours later, I sat in my office staring at spreadsheets. My job was monotonous. I got paid to shuffle numbers around and pretend it mattered. I finished my tasks quickly and decided to leave early. It was Friday, and hardly anyone stuck around past noon anyway. On the walk home, my thoughts drifted, as they often did, to what my life had become. I had once dreamed of adventure, driving cross-country, hiking through foreign landscapes, diving into the unknown. Then I met Rachel. I loved her, I really did. But over time, the thrill faded. Love turned into marriage. Marriage turned into responsibility. We had a kid, which meant preschool applications, better jobs, longer hours, endless obligations. I wasn't miserable, but I wasn't happy either. And then I passed the flyer again. Without really thinking, I dialed the number. It rang once before a woman answered. "Hello," a woman said. Hi. I'm calling about your ad." "Great. When do you want to pick it up?" "Pick what up?" "The bottle," the woman said, as if it were obvious. "Oh, right. And, what exactly is in the bottle?" "Joy," the woman replied. "Pure joy, just like the flyer says. Bottled up. Keeps better in glass than plastic." "Sure. Should we meet somewhere?" "Yeah, let's do somewhere public. Can't be too careful, you know." We settled on a cafe parking lot a mile away. As I walked, I wondered if this was some elaborate joke, or worse, a drug deal. Maybe joy was code for some street drug, and I was about to stumble into trouble. But something kept me moving forward. I texted the woman when I arrived. She responded immediately. "Me, I'm here." The woman, "Cool, pulling up now." "Me, what are you driving?" The woman, "Silver Corolla." A silver car glided into the lot. A young woman stepped out. She had golden curls, but wore all black. She reminded me of a storybook princess dressed for a funeral. "Nice day out," the woman said. "Yeah, I guess I hadn't noticed." "You were the one asking about the bottle, right?" "Yeah, that was me." She handed me a tiny glass bottle, no bigger than a shot glass. Inside, lights swirled and shimmered, as if someone had trapped a sunbeam. Even in the daylight, it glowed. "Pretty cool, huh?" the woman asked. What is it?" "I told you already. Joy. In a bottle. And what do I do with it?" "Keep it," she said. "If you have questions, text me." She turned to leave. "Wait." I called. "How much do I owe you?" The woman smiled. "Don't worry. You'll pay." Then she drove away. I pocketed the bottle and walked home. The sky darkened. A storm rolled in fast. Rain soaked through my clothes as I sprinted toward my house. But when I reached the front door, my key wasn't on my ring. Confused, I knocked. "Babe, it's me. I lost my key." The door opened, but instead of Rachel, a broad-shouldered man with greasy hair stood in the doorway. "Think you got the wrong house, buddy," he said, smirking before shutting the door. Panic bloomed in my chest. This was my house. I had lived here for years, but everything inside looked different. The walls, the furniture, none of it was ours. I fumbled for my phone to call Rachel, but her number was gone. No texts, no photos, no proof she ever existed. I tried to recall her face, but drew a blank. The more I grasped for details, the more they slipped away. My son, what was his name? What did he look like? I knew I had a wife, a child, a home, but I couldn't picture any of it. My phone buzzed. Her. "Hey, how's it going?" I typed furiously. "Me. What the hell did you do to me?" The woman. The worst is yet to come. I gripped the glowing bottle in my hand. It pulsed warmly. I thought I had bought joy, but it had stolen everything instead. I was untethered, adrift. Another text came. The woman, break the bottle, Leo. I didn't hesitate. I hurled it to the ground. The light inside exploded, consuming everything. It was like watching the birth of the universe, pure radiance swallowing the darkness. It wrapped around me, warm and familiar. Then I blinked. Morning light streamed through the window. Sheets rustled as Rachel stirred beside me. My son's laughter rang from down the hall. I grabbed my phone. One unread message. The woman, let me know if you ever need another bottle. Smiley face. I called in sick. I pulled Rachel close and kissed her hair. Later, when our son climbed into bed with us, I held him tight. Yesterday, I might have found his restless energy exhausting. Yesterday, I might have been lost in the dullness of routine. But not today. Today, I was happy. My fiancé keeps watching me from the shadows, and it's becoming terrifying. My fiancé, Emma, and I have been together for 6 years and engaged for 11 months. Our relationship has always been steady, normal. Emma has always been pragmatic, logical, and level-headed. She was never the type for silly pranks or childish antics. In fact, she never even liked horror movies. The one time she watched The Shining with me, she barely made it halfway before we had to turn it off. So, what happened over the last few weeks has shaken me to my core. It started 2 months ago. I was rushing through my morning routine, late for work, when I caught a glimpse of Emma peeking at me from around the hallway corner. Only one of her eyes and a few strands of her auburn hair were visible. The moment I locked eyes with her, she darted away like a startled animal. Jesus, Em, you scared the crap out of me. I laughed, rubbing the coffee stain off my shirt. She didn't respond, just hurried off into the living room. I found it strange, but also kind of endearing. Maybe she was just being playful? That wasn't like her, but I decided not to overthink it. 3 nights later, I woke up thirsty and went downstairs for a drink. As I stood at the kitchen counter, the unsettling feeling of being watched prickled the back of my neck. I glanced down, and there she was. Emma was crouched behind the kitchen island, her face peeking up at me from the floor, her wide eyes unblinking, her mouth stretched into a Cheshire cat grin. I screamed and stumbled back, nearly dropping my glass. The second I reacted, she scuttled backward on all fours, disappearing into the dark hallway. The sound of her hands and feet smacking against the tile sent a shiver down my spine. When I finally gathered the courage to go upstairs, she was in bed, fast asleep, her breathing slow, peaceful. I hovered in the doorway, watching her, unsure if I had imagined it. The next morning, I brought it up lightly over coffee. You were creeping around last night. I joked, half expecting her to tease me back. She frowned, shook her head. I have no idea what you're talking about. I tried to laugh it off, but something about the way she dismissed it felt wrong. The peeking continued. I'd catch her peering at me from behind doors, between the curtains, even from inside her grandmother's antique chest at the foot of our bed. One night, as we watched Netflix, I mentioned her odd behavior. You haven't peeked at me lately, I joked. Did you give up your spy game? She smirked. Maybe I just got better at it. I didn't sleep much that night. Then came the worst night of my life. Emma had gone to visit a friend. I stayed home, unwinding with a video game before jumping in the shower. Halfway through rinsing my hair, that suffocating feeling returned. My pulse quickened. Hesitantly, I opened my eyes. She was there, her head poked through the shower curtain, fully inside the shower, but her body remained outside. Her hair hung in wet strands. Her mouth gaped in a horrifying grin, her eyes bloodshot and wild. Black streaks of makeup ran down her cheeks like something out of a nightmare. I screamed. She didn't move. She didn't flinch. For several agonizing seconds, we just stood there, the steaming water pouring between us. Then, as slowly as she had appeared, She slid her head back out of the shower. A moment later, the bathroom door slammed shut, rattling the walls. I locked the door and stayed inside for an hour. My mind raced with questions, but mostly, I was terrified to face her. Eventually, I gathered the courage to check under the door. She wasn't there. I forced myself to open it, but as I stepped out, I heard it, a faint, raspy moan. It came from the closet. My stomach dropped as I turned my head. The door was open just a crack, just enough for one wide, manic eye to peer through. I ran. I grabbed my keys and bolted from the house, her laughter echoing behind me. I drove straight to my brother Lucas' place, barely able to explain why I had shown up in nothing but boxers. He and his wife, Claire, let me stay the night. I barely slept. The next morning, Claire asked if we could work things out. "Emma loves you," she said. "She must be heartbroken. You saw her?" I asked, my blood running cold. "Yeah, she came by this morning while you were still asleep. She looked awful. Said she just wanted to make sure you were okay." I checked the locks on the doors. I called Emma's mother, hoping for an explanation. When I asked if there was any history of mental illness, she was silent for too long. "Seek professional help," she finally said. "Do not call me again." That night, Lucas and I drove to my house. The front door was slightly open. The air inside smelled rotten. Every curtain was drawn. As we searched the house, my stomach churned with dread. Then, in our bedroom closet, we found them. Dozens of eyeballs, laid neatly in rows on a cloth. Some were small, others disturbingly large. I gagged. "Lucas, we have to leave. Now." Before we could move, we heard it. The smallest of noises. A hiccuping giggle. We turned toward the bed. Emma lay underneath, curled on her side, her fingers trembling with excitement. Her lips stretched into a monstrous grin, her bloodied hands twitching against her chin. "Emma," I whispered, stepping closer. "Are you hurt?" She shuddered, nodding rapidly. I knelt down, reaching toward her. She lunged. Pain seared through my arm. I fell backward, gripping my bleeding wrist. Emma grinned wider, gripping a jagged shard of glass. Then her attention shifted. She wasn't looking at me anymore. She was staring at Lucas. And she wasn't smiling. She was hungry. My job is to monitor a woman trapped in a room. And she just sent me a message. 3 years ago, I was browsing job listings online when I stumbled upon an unusual ad. It was vague, reading only, job opportunity, good pay, no benefits, discretion required. It listed an email address, nothing more. At the time, I was managing a small bookstore, but rumors had started circulating that it would be shutting down soon. With few prospects and a sense of curiosity, I decided to send an email. Within 30 minutes, I received a response directing me to an upscale office building for a screening. When I arrived, I was led to a small office where I filled out a stack of forms and questionnaires. Then, silence. I nearly forgot about it until a month later when I received a call inviting me to the second phase of the hiring process. This time, I was given a different address and met by a man who introduced himself as Mr. Gray. Mr. Gray led me into a room that contained a desk, 2 monitors, and a small metal box with 2 oversized buttons, one red, one green. He explained my role. I would work 7 shifts per week, 6 hours each. Upon arrival, I'd enter a locker room, store my belongings, and change into a provided uniform. I was never to bring anything inside the surveillance room or take anything out. My job was simple. The left monitor would display a live feed from a remote location. My task was to watch. Every hour, I would log anything noteworthy on the right monitor, a text-only interface. The red button was for emergencies, something requiring immediate outside intervention. The green button was for anything particularly significant. Mr. Gray emphasized that discretion was key. I was merely a backup system. Others were watching too. The pay? $35 an hour. That unsettled me. Why so much for something so simple? My mother had always warned me. If something seems too good to be true, it probably is. I asked if the job was illegal. Mr. Gray chuckled and assured me it was not. I asked if anyone would get hurt. Again, he shook his head. He said they needed employees who were professional and discreet. If I accepted, I would have to sign non-disclosure agreements. Breaking them could lead to lawsuits or worse. I accepted. The actual workplace was identical to the model room I had seen, except, of course, this time the monitors were on. The right monitor was a simple logging system. The left monitor, it showed a room, a bedroom, technically, but more like a furnished studio, a bed, a television, a sofa, some chairs, and an assortment of tables. The camera angle covered nearly everything, mounted high in one corner, and in the center of the room was her. She was young, maybe a few years older than me, with auburn hair and delicate features. When I first saw her, she was curled up on the sofa, asleep. The clarity of the video was striking. I could see the gentle rise and fall of her breath. I shifted uncomfortably. It felt like spying, like being a voyeur. I reminded myself that I wasn't harming her. The room was well kept. Maybe this was an experiment, some psychological study. Maybe she was there by choice. So I sat down and began my work. It didn't take long to realize she wasn't there voluntarily. She never left. The only time she exited was when people, men and women in sterile, uniform-like outfits, came in and took her. Sometimes she resisted. Sometimes she went quietly, but she always returned. I never saw signs of physical harm, but I still knew something was wrong. I thought about quitting, about pressing the red button, about calling the police, but I was afraid. Mr. Gray had been clear, discretion was mandatory. I rationalized it. Maybe this was part of a psychiatric study. Maybe she was sick and they were helping her. Maybe if I stayed, I could protect her in some way. If something truly terrible happened, I could act then. Then, a few weeks ago, things changed. She had always painted, usually in the afternoons. It seemed to bring her peace. But recently, her paintings had become frantic, urgent. She worked for hours, sometimes all day. Her expression had shifted from serene to focused to distressed. Then, one day, she arranged 4 finished paintings along the sofa, finally revealing them to the camera. The first depicted a dense green forest. The second, an old stone well. The third, a lonely house on an island. The fourth, a grand, empty movie theater. They were beautiful, surreal, ethereal. Then I noticed the swirling colors in the air, subtle strokes, almost invisible, woven through the paintings. Not random, intentional. They formed words. I leaned closer, my pulse pounding as I pieced them together. Please, help me, Ethan. I recoiled from the screen, my stomach knotting. My name is Ethan.